Hello everyone, and welcome to Creswell's Chapter 12 Survey Designs presentation by me. Beginning with the theoretical underpinnings and grounding assumptions of survey research. We look at the economical and efficient means of gathering large amounts of data made available by survey research. Surveys providing information from a sample or entire population that then can describe the attitudes, opinions, beliefs, behaviors, or characteristics of a population. Survey research provides trends in the data rather than rigorous explanation. The idea here is to provide the whats and not so much the hows and the whys. Keys then to survey success. Surveys need clear, standardized questions. Survey research needs a representative sample of a population. Need to collect data through interviews and questionnaires. Surveys use proven scales, for instance, a Likert scale, and they obtain a high response rate. And Creswell says to aim for a 50% plus response rate, but more importantly is to have a representative sample of the entire population. Survey research needs to check for bias and consistency in the interviewer and the interviewee as well. The idea then is to learn about the population and not to make predictions or determine outcomes from certain variables. This is the nature then of survey research. Where do we start? Survey research purposes. So the idea with survey research is, do you want to know the current characteristics of a population, or do you need to know how these characteristics may change over time? With changing over time, we look at longitudinal studies, longitudinal survey research, and then with current characteristics of a population, we look at cross-sectional survey research. Here's a chart or a diagram given from Creswell's book, looking at the different ways in which survey designs can be broken down. Longitudinal having the three different types given there: trend, cohort, and panel, and cross-sectional having the 5 different types there, looking at the different attitudes and practices, community needs, program evaluation, group comparison, and the national assessment. So then, the questions. Will any questions do? First, the researcher needs to try to use an existing survey instrument, one that you can use, or more likely, one that can be modified. Questions within a survey need to be varied and strategic. So varied in that they ask the respondent personal, attitudinal, behavior, closed, open questions. That the respondent has opportunity to give a full accounting of who they are and the experience being researched. Maybe one of the most important parts in creating questions is putting these questions through a pilot test so that the researcher can get feedback and make changes necessary so that the research population best understands the questions being asked. Here are some examples of some questions that I put together to give a little bit of an understanding of what survey questions might look like and the different types of questions that may be asked. Survey research is not limited to simple yes and no or Likert type scale questions. You can also use closed-ended questions where different options maybe are given, but also open-ended questions that allow for the respondents to give a little bit more description and context to their answers. Data collection. Who does what? Participant-driven data collection looks like participant questionnaire. Participant questionnaires can be mailed or web-based. The value in participant questionnaires is their quick, economical, and efficient means of gathering data. Cons can be lack of participant investment and misunderstanding of the questions. Also, with web-based participant questionnaires, those who don't have access to technology may be eliminated from the potential sample population. Off to the questionnaire then. Here's an example of what a questionnaire might look like and how it might be set up. You might start with a cover letter that introduces the researcher, the purpose of the research, and the sponsor of the research being done. Encourages a return of the questionnaire and assures confidentiality to the respondent and estimates the time commitment that might be required to complete this questionnaire. The survey then comes next, and it begins with basic personal questions and moves towards closed and open-ended questions. In closing, a questionnaire gives final instructions for returning the survey and thanks the participant then for their time. Researcher-driven survey research. This might be an interview, something that might be one-on-one, a focus group, or happen by telephone. The pros of one-on-one is it's good for sensitive questions and participant explanation of the context of their responses. Cons are there can be interview bias and there's no anonymity between the respondent and the interviewer. In focus groups, there's pros of the interviewee interaction with the different people coming together and sharing their responses and maybe building off of each other's responses as well, which increases the data offered to the researcher. Cons are this possibility for one interviewee to dominate the conversation and therefore belittle the feelings and understandings of the rest of the interviewees. By telephone, the pros are access to distant participants, whether that's geographically or by disabilities as well. Cons are it has a telemarketing feel and people might not be so willing to participate in such research. The interview then. Some tips for success when giving an interview. So interviews are not always done by the actual researcher themselves, and often they need interviewers to be trained, and maybe many of them. So here's some tips for training your interviewers. Get them to dress and act professionally. Establish initial rapport with the interviewee and give direction for the interview as it's going to happen. The interview needs to ask questions exactly as they are prescribed, in order and in wording, so that every interview done has consistency in it and gives accuracy of results. The interviewer needs to remain neutral, using a respectful tone. The interviewer needs to accurately record participants' responses by avoiding bias and being consistent. And so this is where the interviewer is not allowed to give reactions to responses or potential prejudice in the way in which they record the respondents' answers. The researcher needs to allow participants to expand their responses and also then number these responses so that they can be analyzed later on as the researcher continues their work. Analyzing the data. Creswell gives a helpful three-step process when analyzing survey research data. First off, he identifies the response rate and the bias response within the sampled population. Second, he moves to descriptively analyze the data to identify general trends within the data. And thirdly, he writes the report presenting the descriptive results or using advanced statistics. The sub-steps are given there, and you can analyze more for your own enjoyment. How do we know if this research is credible? Creswell continues on by giving different questions which allow for an evaluating of survey research. And so some good questions to ask of survey research is the target population described? Was a systematic approach used to create the sample? Is the sample size given, and how was it established and explained? Is the type of survey used identified? Were the procedures for administering the survey instrument explained? And did the researcher ensure a high rate of return? Is the data systematically analyzed? Can I get into trouble with survey research? Ethical issues in survey research. Survey data is often minimally reviewed by institutional review boards due to its very benign nature, unless the data involves minors or is sensitive in nature. Interviewers must keep interviewees from harm by not being deceptive, misleading, or inaccurate during questioning and reporting. Participants then must remain anonymous in their responses, and in that those responses are confidential to the research and cannot be traced back to them. Researchers must be wary of small samples where participant responses can be deduced back to them then as well. Assertions made by the critics. Researchers must be honest about how comprehensive their sample truly was. Those who were omitted and possibly even those who had no chance to be sampled within their survey at all. To save money often then, survey researchers easily fall into the trap of including biased or incomplete responses to boost their own response rates to make their surveys seem more legitimate. Surveys, though, must be reviewed, and reviewed in order to reduce errors and to increase standardization. The important part here is during creating questions to put them through the pilot testing. The researcher then must be constantly weighing the resource costs of time versus money. Time versus money. How much can you put into this research when creating the quality of your sample?
I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Let the rain wash away all the pain of yesterday.
Survey research summary then. Creswell gives 8 clear steps for going through survey research and having a quality study and report to finish with. Number 1, decide if a survey is the best design to be using for the type of research you hope to be doing. Identify the research questions or hypothesis. Number 3, identify the population, the sampling frame, and the sample from which you hope to be gaining knowledge from. Determine the survey design and data collection procedures that you're going to be using. Develop or locate an instrument that you can use or modify for your survey. Administer the instrument. Analyze the data to address the research questions or hypotheses. And then finally, of course, write the report. And hopefully your report can then be published. Here are the resources that I used when completing this project. Thank you for your time, and hopefully you learned something about survey designs from Creswell's Chapter 12. Have a good day.